So we just pivoted. We shuttered the marketplace and went full boat into the brand. And then we got a taste of like the most competitive industry in the world.
Welcome to Not Another CEO podcast. I'm your host, David Politis. Every week, we talk to inspiring leaders and get the true stories, the ups and downs, the lessons learned, and come away with actionable advice for our own journeys. Today's guest is a serial entrepreneur and brand builder. She actually began her career in finance, but soon transitioned to entrepreneurship. She started her current company, Winky Lux, in 2015. Winky Lux redefined the beauty industry. They've been celebrated for using ethically sourced ingredients, ensuring products are both high quality and responsibly made. After growing the company for the last decade, they sold the company to a private equity firm last year. She just hired a new CEO and she stepped into a creative director role. Please welcome co-founder and former CEO of Winky Lux, Natalie Mackey.
So great to be here.
Very excited we're finally doing this. We had to move this a couple times, but I'm very excited. Let's jump right into it. So first question, what is the one thing that you've done, big or small, at Winky Lux that had the biggest impact, and you do again if you're CEO of another company in the future?
The biggest thing that we did a lot. There were a lot of tentpole moments throughout the company's history, and they were all different throughout different eras of, to use the Taylor Swift term, the different eras, super startup, scalable startup, PE-backed business. But the thing that was probably the most transformative for the team was really getting very specific about our core values and putting them down on paper. We were sort of obsessed with core values at Winky Lux. And we do things like we wear bracelets that have the core values on them. We represent each one with a stone. We're kind of culty and nerdy about it. But it's a big deal, and it helps us when we're making fast decisions or making a lot of decisions at once. It helps us give us a North Star to constantly move towards like a bigger, better company.
When you say write them down, was that like day one before you hired anyone, or did you do that later?
It was later. We had these kind of cheesy "we believe" statements on the wall when we first started, and that was really just my co-founder and I talking about what we wanted the type of employee to be and what kind of business we wanted to build. We'd both built businesses before this, and we were pretty specific about how we wanted to build this one. Um, but we really didn't hone it down until there was a moment when the business was growing a lot faster and we felt like we were getting out of control. There were new people coming in. It was getting to a point where we didn't have as much intimate knowledge of sorry, my dog is in the background, just walking around. He just jumped on the bed. We didn't know people as well. Like there were people who we might not really we definitely didn't know their last name by heart, that type of thing where you go from like a tiny startup where you spend a ton of time with everyone to a scaling startup where you start to hire people and you may not have even met everyone that you've hired, or maybe you've met them over a Zoom call for 5 minutes. Um, and so that was when we really decided to get like hyper specific about it. And that I think has helped us, with a pretty small team, really grow the business.
Hmm. When you, how many values did you have?
We have 5.
5.
We have 5. Yeah.
When you talk about like the bracelets, I'm curious. Like I love these examples are what I actually love because I think it gives people ideas of the level that you can take it to. So you talk about like the bracelets, or the stones, like. Is that you give that to every employee? Was it like for a special occasion? How did you do that?
We gave them at an offsite, and then we give them to new employees. So we gave them all to employees at an offsite. They're just little stone bracelets that have the different. So we have pink tourmaline, We have a diamond, which is our, our most precious, which is crown the customer. We have internal entrepreneurship, um, which is like an aquamarine stone. It's just a really it's really cheesy. When I say it out loud, it sounds crazy, but it really means something to people, that we're thinking about this all the time, and people wear them all the time to
Yeah.
events and things. Like, you don't have to wear them. There's no, like, rule, but they're pretty and people do enjoy them. Um, and, we have some guy employees yeah. And even they, like, they'll say, like, "Oh, my wife or my girlfriend or, has been wearing it all the time," and, I keep it on my desk. So we've given out little actual stones, like little paperweights with the stones before too. So,
I love it. I
yeah.
love it. Honestly, I think for me, we had a bunch of and all the companies I've been a part of, we've had values. And at Better Cloud, we had values. And it actually like a real turning point was for us was we did imagery for each value. We had humble yet hungry. And the image was like a apple pie, kind of like and then we had another one that, it's like strive to delight, and it was a really cool smiley face. And once we added the imagery, we started doing stickers with it. We started putting on the wall. And I think to the same thing, it's just I don't know, it manifests, kind of embodies the values in a different way than just the words. And I think that I do think it makes it more memorable.
Totally. And we talk through what does this actually mean specifically? What would we, you know, what is this how does this truly, uh how does this manifest in a day-to-day business operations? Like, would you fire a top performer for not embodying one of these values? Like, we talk to the team about that. Like, what would be something, that we wouldn't tolerate. So I think it really does bring it to life, you know?
Do you bring those values into the interview process somehow?
Yeah, we always put them on our job descriptions when we're looking for people, and then we talk through. And there are a lot of really smart people who wouldn't be the right fit for the company. There are a lot of really smart people who, first and foremost, we're a remote first company. We have a small office, but most of our team is remote. And so we have internal entrepreneurship is a really important one for us because we have to hire people. You could be an incredible person, but really need the structure of the office your to get the most out of your performance, and you wouldn't be the right fit for that business. So creating that sense of understanding of, like, how we operate, how we do things, lead with beauty is a big one. Even our debt, we're a branded company, so everything we do is about brand. Beauty companies in general, at their core, are marketing companies, and even our internal decks are really pretty. So but it bleeds out into, what the customer sees, and if the customer isn't buying into a specific feeling, she can go to one of 5 bazillion beauty companies out there to get a similar type of product. So there has to be something really special about what it means to be part of our community and what, what is unique about the brand, and making sure that everything has, like, an aesthetic bent to it is important to us. So even our, like, our welcome packages and our, like, our internal even our we joke because our spreadsheets are pink and purple instead of blue and green. So,
Seriously? Like, oh my god. You really take it all the way through. I
it's
love it.
such an easy
I
it's
love
such
it.
an easy swap, and, but it's like, it just makes a difference, you're putting it into a big deck, and it really feels like it's part of the culture of the brand.
So in the interview process, like, is there you're looking for the values. Is there for you specifically when you're interviewing, like, is there an attribute that you're looking for and trying to get at?
Yeah, we I haven't we can identify usually through references or through work projects. We can identify someone's tactical skill set. typically. You never hit 1,000, you never hit 100%, right? But you can get pretty close on the technical skill set. The part that I find a little harder to train on is an innate sense of empathy, and humility, and a kindness that isn't always prevalent in some company cultures. So, particularly in beauty, some of the larger companies are known for having sort of a mean culture. The startup community is actually known for being super collaborative and um, really very, um, kind and empathetic. That part, I think we have to sort of flesh out by just getting to know the person a little bit, like understanding what kind of, you know, how they would look at their coworkers. Would they sort of assume positive intent? Would they, would they would they come with curiosity as opposed to, everyone knows that person who, like, needs to always say they're too and, like, in a remote first company and you're on Zoom, I mean, that person can really be a downer in a meeting, who had gotta put their, like, little nugget in every time. You're like, "We're trying to get to a goal, like, let's work together. We don't need to hear how smart you are." So that's a something we try to flesh out.
Hmm. So I wanna pivot a little bit to just the business itself. I mean, um, you the company has gone through a number of iterations to get to where it is today. Can you give me maybe that history so we have context, as because I have a bunch of questions from what I've read, but I'd love to kind of get the context of the journey of the company.
Totally. So we started, 10 years ago. I'm sorry, my dog is trying to jump up on me. Put him in my lap for a second. Sorry, hope this is okay. He's
It's
good.
good. It's good. Oh my god, I love it.
He's a good boy. He's a needy guy. He's the neediest guy in my life. There so we started as originally I had been in finance, and then I'd been in a consulting practice that helped, like what we called high equity brands leverage their brand equity. Sounds great. Sounds so like corporate speak. Um, we helped really cool brands, create more profitable streams of business, if that makes sense. So we help them do things like iPod cases or iPad cases and things like that, iPhone cases. And we did a couple of beauty deals, and I got really interested in the beauty industry. And so when I left that business, I consulted for about a year as I was figuring out my next thing. And my current business partner, who I've known for, oh my God, it might be 20 years now, um, we decided we were going to go into the beauty industry. And at the time, marketplaces were a huge deal. And everybody was talking about marketplaces. It was inventory light, it was really hot. So we decided to create a marketplace where we had a proprietary quiz that would tell you what beauty products to buy, and and we worked with, big beauty brands to be an affiliate. During that time, we saw a lot of white space in the market, particularly in the space of products that looked very luxurious but had a more affordable price point. And we were looking at search traffic that looked like this was sort of pre-dupe culture. Right now in beauty, there's a huge sort of subset of beauty, which is called dupe culture, which is like a dupe for a really expensive, great product. But this was before that.
Like a copy,
Yes,
like a
a
copy
copy of
of.
it. Yeah. So you might have like the Charlotte Tilbury has a $60 um, flawless filter foundation product, and then Elf will come out with basically a replica of that for $14. And it's like sort of known dupes, and that's okay. And and dupe culture is a really big thing, and it's just sort of known in the beauty industry. So, so and that's like, you're looking surprised, but it's like that's how that industry works. But this was before that sort of became such a big deal. And we were seeing a lot of search traffic, and we were talking to a lot of our customers, and they kept saying, "I really want this product, but I can't afford it. I really want this look and feel, but I can't afford it." And we did a qualitative, like, focus group where we just had people, and it was so sloppy. I mean, this was like We were just throwing stuff on the wall to see what would stick. And we had these girls dump out their makeup bags, and they would say things. There were a couple of tells that they said, which were, "Oh, I just got this because I ran out of my good stuff," or "That's really cheap, but it's actually really good." Well, in the beauty industry, there's also sort of like an open secret that there are a lot of products are made by the same people, and they're made at the same factories, so the quality level at mass is actually quite
Are the
good.
same.
Yeah. Look, and it's not all, exact for exact. There are ingredient differences, but, price does not necessarily it's not a linear correlation with quality. So brand is really important, and packaging is really important, and where the mass market was really messing up is, I mean, the best example is, like, you can get a $2 eyeliner or a $30 eyeliner that come from the exact same factory that are the exact same. Eyeliners are a more extreme example, but they really only a few companies that make them, and they're basically the same thing. So, um, but one will usually be packaged really beautifully, look really beautiful, and make you feel really good when you open up your makeup bag. So, we saw this white space in products that had better packaging that looked really pretty, and they also needed to have clean ingredients, which was becoming table stakes across the industry at that point in time. It was sort of new 10 years ago, but it was coming fast. Like, people talk about it like it's more recent, but it was happening 10 years ago. So you needed to have a really strong blacklist. You needed to have really beautiful packaging, and it needed to be in this, like, accessible price point, which can be done. So we ended up doing this little brand called Winky Lux, and it was like an art project. I was a frustrated artist. Had I been a trust fund baby, I would have been an artist. Um, but I wasn't, so I had to work, unfortunately for me. Um, and they so we created it. We had the brand was like a holding name. It was named after a dog from a movie. Um, it was almost like a little side hustle thing that we were gonna put into the marketplace to help fill these holes. And what we started to learn, the more and more that we got into it, was people weren't really solving a problem with shopping for beauty online. To this day, online beauty is still like a very small percentage of the industry. And our quiz was giving them some guidance, but it really wasn't solving a major friction point in the way that it does in, say, fashion, where in fashion, you have to go take your clothes off, you have to go to a store, there are sizing issues, fit issues, like fabric issues. There are all kinds of problems. There's no consistency across platforms, and people really hate shopping for clothes. A lot of people really hate shopping for clothes. Not everybody, but a lot of people. With beauty, people find it sorry, my dog is literally, like, tapping me on the shoulder to hold him. Um, Buddy, we gonna stop. In beauty, people actually love it. They love the shopping experience, and it's a pleasure for them. So the discovery is fun. People talk about, going to Sephora as their therapy. We just weren't solving a big problem. It was just kind of like it was cool, and it was like a very, cool thing to talk about at the time, like these marketplace ideas. But the reality was it wasn't that exciting. It wasn't long-term exciting, and I think that was a good lesson for me because at the time you saw so much funding going into marketplaces. And you're familiar with the VC community. There's like a real herd mentality that this is the hottest thing. Everyone's got to do this. This is the future. This is the future until like 2 years later and they're like, "Ah, forget that. We never liked that. We like this new thing." We never even said that. So, there's, like, a kind of funny, um, bright, shiny object, like, herd mentality, like, they all run the same direction. And at the time, marketplaces were massive, everyone was talking about it, and our advisors said, like, "Whatever you do, just don't go and start a brand." But the customer was telling us that this is what they wanted. They actually really liked Winky Lux. They were really interested in it. They thought it was really cool. They were sort of gasping when they would see the product. And it was a very fearless brand when it was greened up because we didn't have so much writing on it. And it looked really different. It was very differentiated from an aesthetic perspective. And So we just pivoted. We shuttered the marketplace and went full boat into the brand. And then we got a taste of, like, the most competitive industry in the world. Oh, but which has been fun, but also, like, I don't know, you and I talked about this, like, the things you do when you don't know, when you're, like, more naive.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's what's interesting to me when you talk about this that I really like is the time you spent with the customer. Like when you talk about like what is it that they really enjoyed? They wanted to go to the store. So marketplace sounds good and that's like a generic theoretical thing, but then when you get to the actual customer, that that's not what they actually wanted. They wanted to go, they wanted to experience it, they wanted to do all of that. And I love that just of the focus group, people dumping out the I can imagine it, and I love that. I talk a lot about a lot about like I think founders have to spend time with their customers, but not just like actually this raw time with the customer is where you get the most insights,
Yeah.
I had a guest on here who said he's got a software firm, property managers, and he said he went and followed around property managers using his iPad app, and he's like, the guy he literally said, he's like, "The guy had huge fat sausage fingers, and he couldn't press the little buttons we had in the app," and, like, he's like, "A lot of these maintenance guys had big fat sausage fingers, and we made the buttons real," but there's something about, like, being there and seeing it and feeling it that's very so I think that's a really, it's a really good call out.
Thank you. Yeah, the best things that we've ever done in the business have come from deep consumer, like, just paying attention to the customer, like, just listening to what majority of our customers were, so I always refer to them as sheep, but we have lots of Wiki customers, girls, boys, theys, we have all the different types, but, um, even when we launched in retail in 2020, we launched at Target, and, um, we built out this, like, bizarre, crazy display stand, and it was, like, my greatest art project. We won all these awards for it. It was, like, really wild looking, and we put it in every Target store, and then I went and sat at the Atlantic Station Brooklyn Target, which is a really high volume Target, and the beauty section is across from the clothing section, and I, like, hung out, like, found a little place to sit. I almost got kicked out. I was there all day, just, like, creeping on people interacting with the display, and it became really clear to me over that sort of 3, 4 hours that I sat there just watching humans interact with the display. um I hope someone's listening to this that was there that day and is like, "Oh, a weirdo, what?" He probably thought I was, like, deranged, just just sitting there watching people. But really what was interesting is people kept walking, they would stop, we had these neon lights on it, they would stop, they would get really interested in it, they'd walk over, and they would look so confused. Like, it was a really confusing display. You couldn't understand what we were selling. It looked really pretty. It was like, "Wow, what is this place? What is this thing?" And then they would, like, pick up a product, be, like, also confused, put it back down, or, like, walk away with it, but not quite. I saw a lot of, like, picking things up and kind of being perplexed and putting it back down, and that, like, changed the way we merchandise that display to make it a lot more shoppable, to make it a lot more clear because, and I think too, you have to, like, just put a little bit of ego aside, like, even sometimes things that look really cool in, like, an industry thing, we were written up in all kinds of industry magazines having this, like, super innovative display, but, like, the fucking thing didn't work, like, it didn't actually serve the customer in the way that she needed to be served.
It's a great story. That's a great story. I think that actually that embodies everything I'm talking like, that's the thing, right? So you gotta go out there, whatever out there means in your particular field, and be there, and be in the field, and be with the customer, and watch the customer, and observe. So I like that a lot. So you your business has been through pretty much every stage from bootstrapping to venture backed
Yep.
to PE owned. I mean, literally everything you can do. Um, did you, let's start with the bootstrapping. Did you start out purposely not raising, like, did you want to run the business that way, or was that because you couldn't raise money?
No. I love it when people are always like, "I loved bootstrapping, it was so great." I'm like, "Who are you?" Bootstrapping is hard. It's hard. We're living in New York City, even living in, like, a one-bedroom in Manhattan is outrageous, and watching my savings go, from, like, here, like, just it was crippling, and we were in it, and we were really starting to grow, and it took us a long time to raise money. I mean, the reality is I don't know any founder. I have a huge founder community. I know a few founders who are in very, very, topical industries for their moment, and had preempted rounds and things like that. We did have that with our Series A because we were growing so fast, but our, like, initial seed round was so hard. We were out there, like, hitting the pavement for a long time, really meeting with lots and lots of funds. It's also not, you know, I avoid leaning too far into this because I think it distracts sometimes, but the numbers just don't lie. Like female founded companies raise about, every $100 invested in venture, two of those dollars are invested in a female led company. So that's not really self selection. I mean, anyone who understands statistics would say like that is systemic bias. Um, we got through it and we were able to raise a lot of venture capital, but it was always we always met with I felt like I was meeting with 10x the funds um, that my you know, and then that my competitors were, but the reality is, like, the more and more I know, I'm in a YPO chapter, I lead, like, an independent beauty group in New York. The more and more I'm in it, the more and more I feel like some of those stories are, like, they're more lore than they are reality. Like, it's more like it's more fantasy than reality. Like, everyone I know has had challenges in fundraising if they've gone this sort of traditional fundraising route of, like, I'm gonna go out and, it might be different if, like, your dad runs a massive bank or if your co-founder had a, billion-dollar exit, there are lots of special situations, and then there are businesses from time to time that are just so topical. A few years ago, that was really like the AI space. Right now, we still see a lot in health tech, although I feel like everything's softened, but, there's like the market dynamics affect fundraising a lot. I think more so than people ever wanna talk about.
Hmm. Um, I've talked to a couple of women founders who have had, you know, um, the same discussion actually about fundraising and the challenges, around that. Did you, was there anything specific you felt in the process or, um, because I've heard some interesting stories. I'm curious
Yeah,
if there was something specific you felt or seen.
there were a lot of I think that the rumors are true. Female founders are generally over-advised and underinvested in.
Over advice. I
Yeah.
haven't.
Over-advised and
That's
underinvested in. So, a lot of people who wanted to be helpful, a lot of people who are very kind and nice and, we didn't have, like, horrible experiences, but there was the one that always just, like, grates me is, like, I've gotta ask my wife, and it's like, "Well, buddy, do you fucking run a fund or do you not run a fund?" Like, I'm sorry, but, like, can you imagine a woman saying, like, "I gotta go ask my husband if he's ever used this product?" It's like, "Are you investing in this category? Did you raise money from institutional LPs to invest in this thing? And you're relying on like, the whims of a very wealthy woman who lives in, you know, uh Palo Alto to tell you whether or not this is like and I'm no insult to their wives. I mean, their wives
right, right, right.
amazing stages for customer demand, but the odds of, like, to rely on one person to get, a sense of, like, market demand is just bizarre. And I think that there's a little bit of, like, if I could say one thing to, like, male run funds, it's like, just don't say that. Just be like, "We need to do more research." Even if you should go ask your wife too, but, like, just we need to do more research is, on market demand is just a better way than just like, "Let me see if my wife uses this product." It's like, "Okay."
Um, so each round, so going from bootstrap to venture to private equity is obviously very different. Um, for you as a CEO, is there a way to kind of describe the differences for you kind of at each of those stages? How did your role evolve? How did yeah, because I think not a lot of people actually go through all those stages to be honest. So it's actually I think it's very interesting to see what is it that they, that kind of how does the job change?
Yeah, totally. It changes a lot is the short answer. Um, w we in the beginning, my job was to do everything, to be the leader and the janitor and the graphic designer and the copywriter and the pathfinder and the fundraiser and everything. So really Swiss Army knife. And then as we started to scale, and then we got a couple of like generalists in the company, and we started to get we started to get more efficient. And then as we started to scale, my role, and particularly when we started to raise venture capital, my role really shifted into, I'd say 30% of my time was fundraising. And most of the founders I know who are on the venture, I mean, venture has a really specific curriculum. That's probably not the right word, but I find that to be the only word I can think of. There's a curriculum that you're on if you're raising venture capital. There's a timeline that the fund is on where they have to return that money, and you need to be in the phase of, raising and then raising again, and the bigger the business is getting, the more we're in an inventory heavy business, so there's a working capital need always. If I spend $1 for a piece of inventory and I sell it for $2, but I don't get paid for 6 months, and then in the meantime, I've sold 2 pieces of inventory, now I'm out $2 before I even see that first one come back. So that working capital cycle is really complex, and even if the business is profitable, it continues to eat cash as it gets bigger and bigger. So you need to have either we were lucky to have, like, good credit lines that we could lean against, and we had backable customers like Target and Ulta, but you need to kind of understand that, and you need to be fundraising pretty much all the time. So, if you're on that venture cycle, and that's why I don't think venture's for every business, like, I really question whether or not it's, like, the right financial investment tool for a lot of businesses. Like, I think debt is a better tool in some, and, um, self-funding is a better tool in others. Partnerships with manufacturers, suppliers can be better. There's a lot of different ways to, like, skin the proverbial cat.
I actually think that's a super important point because that feels like something right now that a lot of people are talking about actually is exactly that. Like, is venture for everyone? When you look at a lot of the companies that took tens of millions or even hundreds of millions, you there's only really one outcome that
Yeah.
works, like when you take that much money at the valuations, at the speed that you take the money, at the speed you burn the money, there's only really one outcome. And when you actually go and look at how many people reach that outcome, I mean, how many companies get bought for, I don't know the statistics, but I'm sure there are not that many that actually get bought for over $500 million a year. Like there can't be that many. How many get funded every year with valuations that end up surpassing $500 million is probably 100x that, and just by the math, the outcome is not going to be that. And when you're a founder, the money becomes a little bit like a drug. I think once you start raising it, the whole business is built around that mechanism, curriculum, whatever, it's like
Yeah.
that's what it's built around.
You took a ride. You bought the ticket. You're on the bus now. Like, this is what you're doing, and the fund's gonna need its money back, and you're gonna need to keep growing to get that next round, and if you don't get that next round, your competitors will surpass you, especially like the tech world where timing is so important, and market leadership is so important. It's a really interesting I think there's I think the financial markets are becoming, like, more and I think entrepreneurs are becoming, like, a little bit more aware of alternative funding sources. I mean, obviously, the interesting thing today is that it costs so much less to green up companies than it did, when you and I were first starting businesses, right? Like,
Yes,
it's
yeah, it's
so
true.
much more expensive back then because you needed more humans. And now with the advent of, like, AI, it's like everyone's favorite topic, but it's really disruptive.
It's real. It's real.
Yeah, and outsourcing the ability to talk in real time to teams overseas that are, where you can have, 1 developer equals 2 developers, overseas. It is a really interesting time, um, particularly in my industry where, consumer still requires it's still cash intensive because of the inventory. Or consumer products are, I should say. CPG, when I say consumer, I really mean, like, consumer packaged goods, but, in the rest of it, as far as, like, support staff and operational expense, have really been reduced, and so this is gonna be an interesting time to see, like, some really great scrappy entrepreneurs come out of the woodwork and not need as much, venture funding as they did in the past.
You mentioned before YPO.
Yeah.
You said and actually that's how we got introduced, was someone in
Yeah,
the
in my
in the
forum,
YPO
yeah.
group. Yeah. How long have you been? I've never been in YPO, but I've had a number of guests mention it. How long have you been in YPO?
4 years, 4-ish, but yeah.
What is? Can you just maybe briefly describe the structure of YPO?
Sure, sure. No, I'm trying to recruit. I want to recruit great entrepreneurs into my chapter. We're the Manhattan chapter. We're really great. Um, yeah, I'm actually the membership engagement chair. I'm on the board this year.
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Okay.
Um, First of all, there are lots of different chapters of YPO. You have to hit a global threshold for revenue, employee count, and
You as the CEO, like your company.
as the CEO, yeah, your company has to hit a certain threshold, and then outside of that, there are different chapters that sort of have different values, and, um, I can't speak for every chapter. Our chapter is a very entrepreneurial chapter. We have, like, I think it's 60% entrepreneurs, which is unheard of, um, and uh, yeah, and we also have 30% women, which I think is like we get some sort of award. I don't wanna misspeak, but I think we're like the highest percent. I think we're like number 3 in the world, if you can imagine, in the world for female members. And it just comes down to, like, that same thing we were talking about, like, women have a harder time accessing capital. So and that's changing. But it's harder to get to that stage. And so New York is just a great place to be a female entrepreneur in general. I think the numbers bear that out. And so there's, like, a lot of, really great female CEOs in my chapter as well. So that's my pitch.
How often do you meet?
We meet we have forums, and forums are like, I always think my greatest asset as an entrepreneur has been my friends. Like, my friends have really taught me so much. I've had these friendships with I've always been drawn to sort of maverick type of people. I've always been drawn to other entrepreneurs. And, even when I worked at finance, I remember meeting the entrepreneurs that we were investing in and thinking, like, "How do I spend all my time with these people?" Like, I don't really I mean, my boss is cool. He's smart, and he's a good investor, and this is it's cool. But, like, this sucks compared to what these people are actually building companies. Like, they're building products. They're imagining something and then making it real, whether it's a tech product or a physical product or, a solution for something. And that was just so much more interesting to me. So somehow, just because I liked entrepreneurs, I ended up collecting a lot of them as my my friends, and then I've been lucky because those people I've been able to lean on. And then YPO is just like an acceleration of that. It's like an entrepreneur group, and then there's a very intentional meeting every month where, you get together and really talk through different, challenges in the business.
Hmm. What is, speaking of challenges, what is the biggest challenge you ever faced at Winky Lux, and how did you overcome that?
I mean, we had a lot of challenge. It depends on the day. I look back, the one that gave me real PTSD is we had a lender, uh, I'm a fan of using debt for working capital because I think using equity, you really need that to build brand. Um, but we had a lender that, there was a time when you could really borrow against your purchase orders and your receivables, and you could get close to 100% when you get like 95%, of your receivables, from companies that were very unlikely to go out of business, like Target and Ulta, our 2 biggest customers. And we had a lender who, right around the time that Silicon Valley Bank went under, um, very, very quickly, they went out of business. They had a lockbox. We had a north of $10 million line with them, and, they were able to, like, basically say, "We're gonna sweep your capital, so we're gonna potentially put you out of business in, a month." And so we had to refi that in a terrible credit market,
Terrible, terrible.
and it was it was crazy. The business was growing. We had great customers, and all of a sudden, we lost an extraordinary amount of capital overnight. Um, and it had nothing to do with us. It wasn't we had been a good customer of theirs. Lots of their customers had been good customers, but they it's a long story, but they had sort of been mismanaged, and there was this actually happened to a lot of companies during that time. A lot of them didn't survive. So, so grateful that we were able to fix that, but that was a tough, tough time. Like that, and even just the workout afterwards, the market changed. We went from being able to really fund those receivables at a high rate to being, getting like 60% for a while on those receivables, which it just means that like all of a sudden you have this open budget where you're like, all right, I'm going to use my profit to really build the business. And then I'm going to fund all my inventory through these credit lines. And beauty has good margins. So it's actually like a really good type of business to utilize that type of credit. To all of a sudden, like, wait, I can't even like really purchase order financing. Like, I don't want to say it went away overnight, but it just became like it became like a persona non grata. Like a lot of funds didn't do it anymore. They sort of stepped away from it. And so that was a massive learning experience, both from like a financial structuring and um, also from a risk mitigation standpoint. It's just not something that a CEO prepares themselves for, right? You don't wake up in the morning and go like, I hope like 4 major banks don't go out of business. Like that won't happen.
That was I mean, to layer onto everything else that had occurred in the world, to then just put that in the mix of it. I was on a plane. I was flying somewhere, and I got a email or a Slack from our CFO, and I'm on the plane. He's like, "We need a new bank account, and we need to move all of our money immediately." And I'm like, "What?" And you can't open up a commercial banking. They need to know your customer and all that. And I was like, "Oh my!" But and we luckily we were able to do it, and we already had another bank. But I mean, I was in a WhatsApp group with a bunch of founders. People were like going to the banks to get cashier's checks of like $50 million, like literally their entire balance to move in. They're like walking around San Francisco with like a cashier's check with their entire company. One person started routing everything to his personal bank account, and it was like a crypto something. So then the SEC started to investigate him immediately
Oh
because
my
it was like,
god, yeah, of course, yeah. And he's
um,
probably sitting there going, "What do I do? Do I, like, save the company and potentially go to jail?" Or like
I mean, crazy,
wow,
crazy,
that's bananas. Yeah, those were wild times, man. That was,
wild,
like, one of those
wild.
things where I think it just, you could never learn that in a business school class. Like, I guess you could now, but you can't be prepared for the next time some, like, fuck show is gonna happen
No.
like that. Like, that was a circus, and there is no way to prep for it. You just have to, like, be really resilient and wake up the next day and go, "Nope, gotta figure it out, gotta figure it out." So I think that's the stuff. I mean, it's probably why I like entrepreneurs so much because 'cause they're just nutty enough to be like, "Sure."
Where do you think Winky Lux is gonna be in 3 years from today?
Oh, I think, the brand has so much growth potential right now, and we're on, like, a really cool aesthetic trend. We've always had this really what we call, like, rococo, coquette like, we're kind of like the Love Shack fancier. The best thing I ever heard was an editor at Allure said, "If Bridgerton was a brand, it would be Winky." So, we have this very romantic sort of aesthetic, and it is really kind of coming into the cultural zeitgeist right now, which is so cool, and it's so fun to be part of that. So, I think we're gonna see a lot of growth. There's a lot of challenges too. I mean, there's a lot of new beauty businesses out there. The barrier of entry has really gone down, so there's a lot of new competition. Um, Also, there's sort of been a shift in the market. For the last 5 years, we've really been in kind of a skincare world where everything's been about skincare, and we're a color brand. Our heritage is in color, so it's exciting to start to see color come back. Um, so I'm excited to ride these, like, tailwinds, and I'm sure there'll be new challenges. I'm really excited to lean personally, I'm excited to lean more into what I really like doing and what is kind of my zone of genius, which is, like, cultural trends, sort of the intersection of commerce and culture, um, social media, and, like, I really I think there's a big shift in how people are consuming products. So I am gonna kind of be a big part of that in the business, when we think more about, like, live streaming and direct buy apps and things like that that are big. And again, we're just looking at the customer. There's a lot of noise in the market where people are like, "This is huge in China. This is what's gonna be the next thing. It's all about this." And you're like, "Is it though?" Like, the customer will tell us what she wants, but she is finally starting to kind of adapt to live stream buying. That's super exciting. Um,
Live stream
yeah,
buying.
so buying products via live stream, which has been a thing in Asia for 5 years, maybe more. And that has really grown with, like, the advent of TikTok. There's a couple of new native apps that are really big in the beauty industry. So I'm really excited to kind of lean into that. That's really where I thrive. And now that I just hired a new CEO, Lauren, who's amazing, and she is really going to be running a lot more of like the day to day and really working on like the investor relations and um, the like, organizational structure and optimization, which I wouldn't say I can't do. Obviously, I've done it for a decade, but I really don't like it. I really wanna be doing the pathfinding. I am hopeful that that will really be kind of, like, where I spend most of my time.
Hmm. Um, did you I mean, you started in finance, and so, like, did you always know you were gonna be an entrepreneur? I mean, I know you said you were attracted to those people when you were in your finance job, but, like, um, give me a little bit more of the background, like, how did you end up in finance?
I just needed to make money. Um,
Okay.
I'm from a small town. I needed to make money. I wanted to move to New York City. It's not really a thing that you could do, without, like, just I guess you can. People move to Bushwick as artists and they do cool stuff, but, um, I I wanted to do something that would give me some autonomy. I mean, I started my first business when I was, like, 16. I had, like, a little ride-sharing business. So, I went to a really big public high school where if you took the bus, you had to it took a really, really long time to get to school on the bus. So, I bought a car, when I was 16, and, like, right after my 16th birthday, I'd saved up. I bought this car, this, like, old Ford, but it could seat a solid, 6 people, and, so I charge people to take them to school. And I have a brother and sister who are twins, and they're 2 years younger than me, so they were freshmen and I was a junior, and they were, like, in my marketing, and they had to because they needed to ride to school, and I was making them marketers, otherwise they that's how they got paid. So they had me, like, a little sheet, a sign-up sheet, and I would charge it was like Uber. So I do 2
Wow.
rounds in the morning and 2 rounds at night or in the afternoon and just pick people up, take them to school, because otherwise they had to ride the bus. So,
Wow.
so yeah, that was my first business. So I think I've always been sort of a scrappy entrepreneur. But and I've done like a lot of other random stuff. I've done a lot of real estate investing and things like that throughout my career. But I I think I always wanted to I always wanted to build. And I really the greatest gift of entrepreneurship, the greatest thing, I think, and I think I've taken it for granted for the past 16 years, you get to pick who you work with. Like, every day I get to pick people that I think are really fucking smart, and they're, like, genius people. They're way smarter than me, and they come and work with me, and then we do cool stuff together. Like, what could be better than that? Like, I'll take the risk for the benefit of getting to choose these, like, inspiring people that teach me stuff every day.
Hmm. Did when you one of the things that I see, I actually have friends who started in finance and had the entrepreneurial bug, but at some point in finance specifically, you're making so much money.
Oh, I never got there. I was like an analyst, you know,
Okay, okay.
I used to always call it my the brilliant finance career. I left after 4 years. So I've been an entrepreneur for almost 16 years now, which is bananas.
Wow. Um, did you, as you've been through this entrepreneurial part of your career, did you have a mentor? I mean, you mentioned your friend groups and your circles, and but like, did you have some kind of a role model or someone who was like that you can think about that like they really helped you through this journey?
There's a few that come to mind. One of my best friends who's, also one of my daughter's godmothers, is a woman named Mariah Chase, who's just incredible, and we've been friends. She was kind of one of my first sort of, like, fashion-y friends, 'cause when I left finance, I'd gone into this, this consulting group, and I was a partner there. We kinda started it, not me and her, but me and 2 other people, and, she, was one of my friends who had, like, left she had a different career path. She left fashion and had started a company, and then she sold the company. She actually sold it to QVC, and then, and I was kinda watching her do some of that, and really I was really inspired because we were pretty young. Um, and I think I she's just always been, like, a great sounding board. Um, so she just comes to mind, like, immediately because we were friends for so long. Um, but there have been a lot of people. I have tried to be as helpful as I possibly can to, as many founders as possible, and, like, it's been amazing. Some of those founders have, like, become so wildly successful, and they're really I find that I don't know if it's different in other cities, but in New York, I find that the community of founders is really tight, and people are just incredibly helpful. So, it just has depended on what we were going through at the time.
Yeah. I think when you say that, I think about all these conversations where I would go to people for help and people would come to me for help, but then those conversations almost always ended up going both direct without even kind of doing it on purpose. It was like I go to someone for help, they're giving me a bunch of advice, and I'm like, oh, well, I'm dealing with, I did this and this and this. And like, oh, that's really helpful. I'm dealing, in those conversations, I believe that it was actually during COVID, I felt it was the biggest thing that I missed was the time that I spent in person with other founders through whatever channels or events or those moments. I can think back to actual meetings that I had, one-on-ones, very intimate type of conversations that shaped big decisions, like big things that I did in the business back to those people. And so I just think it's important because when you've been doing it this long, it's like it's just important as a reminder of like for founders to get out there and spend that time. And I tell people, not just that, but be super open about the problems you're facing. Don't just go tell everyone you're crushing it, which is kind of, I think, early in your career, at least for me, you feel the need to tell everyone you're crushing it. I always like use Instagram as the example. I feel like you're posting to Instagram, you're like showing the perfect life when in reality it is not. And when you start not being perfect, people are like, oh, I'm also not doing well. It's like you start having these other conversations.
Yeah, totally. And you're so right. Those conversations do usually end up going both ways. Like, I'm sure I've learned a ton from people who've like needed mentorship. I've been like,
Yeah,
cool.
exactly. Yeah.
I didn't even know you could do that on TikTok. Like, that's really awesome. Um, yeah, it's pretty cool. It's definitely like a sort of a strange um sorority slash fraternity that you join when you sign up to
Yeah.
like risk your whole life savings and your family's future on doing some crazy illiquid scheme. um, yeah, it's it's crazy.
Do you think that this is probably a stupid question, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you think that you will start another company?
I mean, I have invested in a few funds. Um, I haven't really done a lot of like direct company investment because I don't have the time or the amount of capital I would need to like probably, properly risk, properly like do enough of it to make it
Yeah, of course.
risk appropriate. So, I've invested in some funds, and those funds have been amazing because they always want operators to come in and look at businesses, and that's been really fun. That's been like I remember that vibe in the beginning where, you're starting to hit that product market fit, and things feel really exciting and electric because I get to talk to some of those entrepreneurs that they're either vetting or that, have asked to talk for help. Um, so I didn't really answer your question. I really am enjoying that is my answer. I'm sure like, I have these like kind of side things in real estate, like with short-term rentals and just invested in like a campground type of thing, which I think is kind of interesting. Um there's these things that I find interesting. And I mean, I have someone close to me that's doing like a roll up of, like boring businesses, which is a very topical thing right now.
Oh, I love that right now. Yeah, yeah, I love that right
Very
now.
cool. And I find that like almost equally interesting. So I find that there's just like a lot of opportunity. So I never say never. Right now I'm really interested in making sure that, Winky takes advantage of this big opportunity that it has, and it finally has cash. Like, we were always kind of behind the cash 8 ball. We never that was a big learning for me. Like, I should have raised more during times when the raising was
Mm,
really
when you
good.
could.
Yeah. I always had this mentality of, like, raise as little as possible, but it just doesn't work that way. Spend as little as possible is a great one. That one is rings true forever. But, raising, I never wanted to give up as much equity and things like that. But I think in hindsight, I would have raised more just to give the company a cushion during times like refinancing debt and things like that. Um, and also to make sure that your investors are really aligned with the business, right? Like they have enough skin in the game that you're all in it to win it together. Um, so now the company, long story short, I'm ranting, but now or I'm going all over the place, but the company now has real cash under its belt, or it has like a war chest to go out and take market share. And so, I'm very focused on making sure that we do that. And then we'll see what else happens. I don't know, David, you want to start something? Like,
Yeah, yeah, maybe like I told you, I'm doing too much probably now, all right, last question for you. Knowing everything you know today, all your experiences, everything, what is the one piece of advice you would go back and give yourself before you started your first job in finance?
mm, um, I would say the only times that I've really that I've made mistakes that were more emotional mistakes where I was worried about what the optics would be for the company. And that's just such a dumb thing to do. It's such a dumb thing to your point about like that sort of like everyone's crushing it vibe. It's really not that important. Like the optics really aren't as big of a deal as people make them out to be. They're Most businesses have like real struggles. And I think that it's really important to like stay focused on first principles, right? Like focused on, and the other thing I would say is a bias towards action. Like every regret, I've made some like random investments in things that were stupid and I never wake up regretting it. Like I never wake up one morning and I'm like, "Oh, I wish I hadn't done that thing." Like never. But there are a few things that I saw and I didn't do, and that is like those are things I'm much more I the things that bother me are the misses more so than the swings. Like, I don't mind swinging and striking out, but I really, really, really hate not having swung. So, that's my then maybe that's more of a personal thing. Maybe I'm too addicted to risk, but
No, that I like that. I like that. Um, Natalie, thank you very much for doing this. I'm happy we had a chance to talk and just I always appreciate people being open like this and transparent, and I think it helps the next generation, which is why we're doing this. So thank you very much.
no problem, David. It's so good to chat with you. See you soon.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you, everyone. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, please share this with your networks, and we'll see you for the next episode of Not Another CEO Podcast. That's a wrap for this week's episode of Not Another CEO Podcast. Thanks for joining. For show notes and more, please visit notanotherceopodcast.com. We'll see you next week.